Coming up on Network Africa, President Muhammadu Buhari promises to bring back and rehabilitate all Nigerians stranded in Libya and other parts of the world. And the United States threatens further sanctions against South Sudan if it does not end violence and allow United Nations peacekeepers to do their job. Plus, Zimbabwe's #ThisFlag movement activist and pastor Eben Mauribe has been acquitted of trying to overthrow then-President Robert Mugabe's government. It's great to have you join me on the program. I am BC Adebayo. We'll begin here in Nigeria, where President Muhammadu Buhari has pledged to do all that is necessary to ensure all Nigerians stranded in Libya and other parts of the world are brought home and rehabilitated. The president was speaking when he addressed some Nigerians in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, where he vowed to reduce the number of Nigerians heading for Europe illegally through the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea by providing basic social amenities such as education, healthcare, and food security at home. In an interactive session with members of the Nigerian community in Cote d'Ivoire on the margins of the 5th AU-EU summit, President Buhari said all necessary steps will be taken to stem the tide of illegal migration by Nigerians. He noted that it's very difficult to know the origin of the people who died while attempting the perilous journey across the Mediterranean because of lack of documentation. According to the president's quote, for people to cross the Sahara Desert and Mediterranean through shanty boats, will try and keep them at home. But anybody who died in the desert and Mediterranean without documents to prove that he's a Nigerian, there's absolutely nothing we can do. End of quote. The president advised Nigerians in Cote d'Ivoire to be good ambassadors in their host country, warning that the embassy will not hesitate to repatriate those who tarnish the image of the country abroad. Meanwhile, young people have remained the focus of this year's African Union and European Union summit taking place today in Ivory Coast. German leader Angela Merkel and France's President Emmanuel Macron are there along with 80 other heads of state. Investing in youth for a sustainable future is the tagline, as 60% of the population across Africa is under 25. Hundreds of thousands of Africans, mainly from West and East Africa, make the treacherous journey across the Mediterranean every year. It's hoped that presidents, prime ministers and policymakers from both continents, Africa and Europe, will address the root causes of migration. The EU is expected to offer new investment and loan agreements because if people's situations in their home countries don't change, the migrant crisis is only going to get worse. Joining us now to talk about this situation is a human rights activist, Olatunji Olariwaju. Thank you for joining us on the program. Well, it's really sad what's happening in Libya with this 21st century slavery that is still taking place. How would you react to all of this?
It's really sad. Thank you for having me first. It's really sad, and I think everybody across the world has condemned this. The African Union chair, Alpha Conde, has also condemned this. You could hear of late Emmanuel Macron, the French president, also condemned this and said this has got to stop. If you look across the West African sub-region, you notice that the governments of Mali, Burkina Faso, and I think another country summoned the Libyan ambassadors in their respective countries to really ask them to explain what was really going on as young Africans are being enslaved and being sold. It is unfortunate and it is very condemnable. It is what everybody should stand together to condemn.
Now, we have different opinions across the world as to why people go on such a dangerous journey just to get to Europe. Some of them even spend thousands of dollars to make the trip. But the question is, why not use that amount of money to improve their lives back home?
You have to look at different factors. There's a pull factor, there's a push factor, and it cuts across. When you look at the sub-region, you find a lot of conflict in the region. Conflict is a push factor for people to want to hurriedly and forcefully leave their country, even without proper documentations. And the part of the pull factors from those places are also the promise of economic opportunities. When you have young graduates, teaming graduates, a lot in millions when people who can't find jobs. The layer of a better economic opportunity is a pull factor for them. And then when you have to, put into context all the issues that is affecting the sub-region, from Boko Haram crisis to the Tuareg issues in Mali to the Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, you find a whole lot of reasons. If you look at the Eritreans, also large numbers of people who die in the Mediterranean, and there's a whole. You look at those countries, you find that the human index in the countries where you have the largest pool of people who are dying and who are in detention camps in Libya, most of them are from countries that are struggling, struggling to create employment, struggling to industrialize, struggling to create opportunities for their people. So those are the issues. African countries need to come to the table and do the right thing right now. If you don't create jobs, if you don't minimize the crisis and mitigate all those issues that could cause unrest and mitigate disasters, you are going to have this kind of issues. People will feel led to want to just run. A lot of people just feel frustrated, hopeless, and that's why they are going.
Well, you mentioned some factors now leading people to make these journeys, but is the government entirely to blame for this situation?
No, not at all. We have to deal with the big elephant in the room. And the big elephant in the room is an European policy. The EU has a policy that is in place now. EU will rather keep the migrants in Libya, even in slavery in Libya, than give them freedom in Europe. The EU has a new policy. The EU is responsible for the funding of the Libyan Coast Guard, up to the tune of 285 million euros of late. They are funding the detention centers in Libya. The EU countries have come to the conclusion that it is better to stop them from crossing over the Mediterranean than having to deal with them in refugee camps and having to deal with people applying for asylum. And so that's a major crisis. That's the elephant in the room. The EU is the major funder of the Libyan Coast Guard and even the counter-illegal immigration department in Libya. So those are the issues. If we don't talk about that, EU also have to look at what is happening in Libya. Now, I'll call your attention to something. As early as January, there was a leaked internal report in the EU during an hearing that they acknowledge that people are being enslaved. The conditions in the detention camps are very, are inhuman. That was as early as January. In July, or about April this year, the IOM also released a report that people are being enslaved, people are being sold in Libya as slaves. And the reason for this has gained momentum because they are being stopped in their track. The European Union countries have they have a system called Operation Sophia or something, and that is supposed to, use NATO is involved in this, the EU is involved in this, and they try before they cross into Europe, and that is why you have a large concentration of the numbers in Libya right now. That is a big elephant in the room. So anybody that is talking about why is now, if it is coming from the European community, you have to ask them it is hypocritical because they know what they have created. There is an unintended consequence of Operation Sophia and what they have been funding in Libya.
Human rights activist Olatunji Olariwaju, many thanks for your time.